and welcome to the tutorial for the Roxy variation and Noelle variation. The Roxy variation is really simple. We use Pico elastic instead of finishing it with the lining fabric and flipping it inside out. I'm just gonna kind of go over this rather than give like a full demo. I think that it's so easy, and when I say it to you, like, oh yeah, I totally have that. I can do that. The Noelle variation is a little bit more difficult, so it requires some pattern changes that I'm going to go over. I'm not going to go over each and every sewing step, but I'm going to kind of I'm going to cut one out, and I'm going to go through the steps and show you what each step should look like, so that you get it. All right, so let's first start off with the easy stuff, the Roxy bralette. Now, the way that the instructions are written is that you have your main fabric and then you have your lining fabric. And a lot of the kits that we've been using, the main fabric and the lining fabric are the same. And you sew this, you sew the neckline edge, you sew the armhole edge, and then you flip it inside out. So for this variation, we use Pico elastic. I think this is a great variation and just shows how you can use the Roxy in so many ways if you don't want to flip it inside out. So what we did is we have our main fabric, which is the cat mesh, with a block fused with Otis 505 spray adhesive. And then all we do, instead of flipping it out, all you do is you just sew Pico elastic here and on the armhole. That's it. That is the variation. So again, I won't show that to you because it's so simple. Okay, so that's the bralette variation. Now the panty variation is a little bit more difficult. Because as you see here, it takes the Noelle and you have one piece and then you have this other piece. So you're thinking like, where do I begin? What are the pattern alterations? What are the changes to sewing? So let me walk you through that. Let me put this to the side here. We have to reference it for the pattern alterations. So I have bring the brightness down a little bit. I have the Noelle pattern cut out, and it's gonna be a lot easier to work with if you just cut it out on both sides. So let's start with the front. So we have the front. So we copied it and so that it includes both sides. Let's put this away for now. So if you see here, we are gonna create another piece that comes up to this point. And then we're gonna cut down the original piece for the underlayer. So I'm gonna call this like the overlay, the panty overlay, and this is the panty. So for the panty, we are going to, and this piece is about, this width right here is about 2 inches. So I'm gonna mark 2 inches down on this side. Okay. And then this piece right here is about 3 1/4. So if you see here, we marked this 2 1/4, and then we marked this up 3 1/4. And you can see there's a little gap, and that's supposed to be there. So what we're gonna do is we are gonna use a curved ruler and create this edge, the top, really the new top of the panty, the waistline of the panty. And you're gonna cut that out. Before you cut that out though, I'm gonna use this as a template to cut the overlay. So I have a scrap piece of paper here. Actually, let me do this. Put this over. Scrap piece of paper here. I'm gonna trace this panty all the way across, top edge, all the way down to that mark that was about 2 1/4 down. Then I'm gonna mark this right here, and I'm gonna mark this right here. And then I'm gonna use my curved ruler again and I'm gonna create that overlay piece. So that's gonna be my overlay. And then I'm gonna cut out both of them. Okay, so that is our front panty piece. And we don't have to add any seam allowances because these are gonna be finished with fold over elastic. So you can see here how it's gonna be sewn. This is gonna be finished with fold over. This is gonna be finished with fold over here. So that's the front. And basically you're gonna do the same to the back. Oh, you might be asking, you know, if this is a size extra small, would you do the same measurements as far as 2 1/4 here and 3 1/4 here? I think the important part is you want to split, you take the length of your side seam and you want to split it so that this is a little bit smaller than this piece and that there's a little gap in between. So we just eyeballed it and came up with our own measurements. So you'll have to do that for your size. But this length right here on the overlay and the panty should be the same. So the side seam length on the overlay should be the same side seam length on the panty. So let's take a peek at the back. So my back piece, again, I cut it on the fold, or I cut it on both sides instead of on the fold. It's a lot easier to visualize the changes. And then I'm just gonna bring out the panty so that we could look at it visually. It's pretty much the same thing, but again, having a visual is a little bit easier to kind of figure out what is going on. So on this one, we're gonna have the same thing. It's gonna be from all the way down at the bottom of the side seam, all the way up to about 2 1/4. And this should be 3 1/4 so that both of them match at the side seams. Okay, so if I have this here, I just wanna make sure that so you want this to be 3 1/4 inches up. And then 2 1/4 inches down. Okay. So first I'm gonna draw the line for the new waistline of the panty. And then I'm gonna take a piece of paper and I'm gonna make the pattern piece for the overlay. And I'm using my curved ruler. It's a slight curve, very slight. Okay, so we have both of our, let me cut away this piece from the back panty. Okay, so you have the back panty piece, the back panty overlay. And then we have the front piece with the front overlay. I'm going to cut these out and walk you through the construction steps. Both of the overlays I'm going to cut out with one layer of mesh. For the front and back panty panel pieces, I'm going to cut out with a black cat mesh lined with a beige stretch mesh. Block these together using Otis 505 spray adhesive. Okay, so are you ready to get sewing? I have cut out all of my pattern pieces. I have my front panty here, my back panty here. Both of them are lined with stretch mesh. And then I have my overlay pieces that are just one layer of mesh. Now the first step, I'm not gonna go through like every single step on how to sew fold over elastic. I have different tutorials for that. But I am gonna go through each and every step. So what you're first gonna do is you're first gonna sew the overlay together along the side seam, along this side seam, not the longer side seam. So the shorter side seam, not the longer side seam. And then you are going to finish the bottom edge, the angled edge with fold over elastic. On the panty, you are going to finish, you are not going to sew the side seam, but you're going to finish the top and bottom angled edges of the panty separately. I had to think about that. I had a little brain fart. We are not sewing the side seam on this one because when we finish sewing the fold over elastic here, we're going to put this on top and we're going to sew all of them together. Okay, so I have sewn the fold over elastic along the bottom edge of the overlay as well as the angled edge on the panty, the front panty and the back panty panel. So now I am going to pin the front overlay to the front panty along the sides. I'm going to pin them together, just one on the top and then one on the bottom. And at the top, the mesh overlay should extend about 1/4/3/8 of an inch because we're going to be sewing fold over elastic here. So I have that, and then I'm going to pin it as well to the back, making sure it's not twisted. There we go. And I'm just pinning them to secure them really quickly. And then I'm going to take this whole thing and I'm going to pin them together at the side seam. So I'm going to sew the front overlay and the panty side seam together. And you want to make sure that the fold over elastics match up along the top edge of the panties. And then I'm also going to pin the front and back panty panel together along the other side seam and the crotch seam. Pin does not want to go in. Okay, there we go. All right, so now I'm going to go to the sewing machine. I'm going to sew the side seams with a 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch seam allowance straight stitch. Also the crotch seam, 1/4 inch seam allowance straight stitch. I'm going to serge them. If you don't have a serger, totally fine. You can leave the edges raw since the fabrics don't fray. Okay, so I have sewn the overlay and the panty together at the side seam, as well as a side seam on the other side and the crotch seam. I've serged all of them. And the last step is to sew fold over elastic along the waistline and the leg openings. On the leg opening, you will be going over the fold over elastic, but on the top edge of the panty, there's should be a little bit of room for where there's mesh, so you're gonna kind of bypass the fold over elastic that's along the waistline on the panty. Okay, so here is the finished panty. The overlay is a little bit shorter than the side seam, or it's not as wide, and that's because it'll go over my hip, and also it's just one layer of stretch mesh, which stretches a little bit more than the cat mesh and the stretch mesh together. So I hope after watching this tutorial, you think, I can totally do that, and doesn't look as hard, or it doesn't look as hard as it is, because it isn't at all. It's super easy. So thanks for watching.